Hey guys, happy day 273 of Catechism in a Year. I'm Anna, a lifelong Southern Baptist who isn't nearly as behind on the Catechism in a Year podcast as I am on my reflections on the Catechism in a Year podcast. Sorry for the random sabbatical. So I'm coming to you once again from the great state of Texas. I don't even have my laptop with me. I'm just recording this on my phone. So I know the audio is probably going to be really bad, so I apologize for that in advance. First things first, in the middle of this sabbatical, I did do an interview with Sarah over at Tiber Bridge, and we had a really lovely conversation. So if you didn't get a chance or if you didn't see it, definitely go check that out, along with the rest of her channel. She's doing some really amazing things. She's got a great story. So does her brother. She's got a conversation with her husband on there that's really lovely. But she's also done some interviews with people like Tim Staples, Joe Heschmeyer. I'm just super excited for her. So go check out Tiber Bridge. I'll tag her in the comments or leave a link to that video so you can hop over there. And so, all right, next on the agenda, where have I been? Okay, so I owe you guys kind of an explanation. Here's what happened. I really loved the episode that I put together on Mary's perpetual virginity. It was so ridiculously fun for me to take that deep of a dive. But I also loved realizing that, this is something that I'm actually convinced of. It's a strange experience, I've been contemplating these ideas for years. So to begin writing about that and realize, wow, this is really real to me. I'm not just intellectually convinced in my mind about it. I'm moved in my heart, and I could have kept spending time getting to know Mary better. And of course, that's kind of always happened in the background. But I wanted to keep getting through the catechism best I could. So onward we go. Until we hit days 114 through 120. And this is where we dove into what it means to believe in one holy, Catholic, and apostolic church. In this section, I became just totally enamored because, well, I just learned the creeds earlier this year because of this podcast, right? And I loved them. I was super happy to find out most Protestant denominations at least affirm the creeds. But as we traveled through these particular days, this thought just wouldn't leave me. What in the world, what do we Protestants mean when we say one holy, Catholic, and apostolic church? So I'll give you a quick rundown of how this line originally struck me, for the sake of time. But one day in the future, I do really want to dive into each of these four marks of the church. But, Protestants believe that the church is the body of Christ, which is made up of all believers, and that our unity is found in our union with Christ. So that oneness, that's what that meant to me, is there's one body of Christ, the body of all believers. So, of course, the church is one. In one sense, that tracks with the Catechism's explanation of one. The gift of unity in the church comes from its source, comes from Christ, comes from God. So there we agree. But there's also those visible signs of unity in the Catholic Church. There's this oneness that we are gifted with, but also a oneness that it's still a gift, but we maintain. Or that I'm speaking from the Catholic perspective, through being the Catholic Church. So the hierarchies that Protestants are a little uncomfortable with, bishops, cardinals, the papacy, all of that has so much to do with being visibly united and providing clarity to the laity through unity and demonstrating unity to the world through being united under these leaders. So even that mark alone obviously gives me a lot to think about as a Protestant, but I'll move on to the next one. The church is holy. And I know that one can be difficult to really think about because sometimes churches seem like the most corrupt institutions, right? But the church, the body of Christ, is obviously holy. And very much like Israel was holy, but was made up of a ragtag team of scoundrels sometimes. The church on earth is holy in the same way. So that one didn't strike me anyway. But the church is Catholic. Obviously, I've been studying this for a while, and you don't have to be deep into it to learn that the word Catholic means universal. And to me, I really thought about just that gospel message, how Jesus came and opened up salvation, not just for the Jews, but for the Gentiles as well, and then gives everybody this mission to go preach the gospel to the far ends of the earth. Obviously, this message is for everyone, everywhere. Jesus is for everyone, everywhere. And in my head, that's how even the Protestant world is universal. And then we get to apostolic. And obviously, I have a background knowledge here of how the Catholic and the Orthodox Church sees itself as apostolic in a way different than Protestant traditions see themselves as apostolic. And this is the biggest difference, right? Or it seems so, because it's a hard concept to wrap my mind around, apostolic succession. So in the Catholic and Orthodox Church, apostolic succession means that from the apostles, their successors, and their successors, there is an unbroken chain. I'm not really sure how it all works, but I know it has something to do with laying on of hands. Whatever the ordination is, that ordination is an unbroken chain back to the apostles. And understanding why that is important is really hard when you've grown up Protestant. And I'll tell you, I think one of the reasons that makes it so difficult is we don't require that. We don't see it as a requirement. And if you grow up in in the evangelical world, you see the spiritual fruit. You see the goodness of Protestant leadership. So it's like, well, if I were to suddenly believe that apostolic succession is necessary for church leadership, what do I do with that experience? And I got really stuck here. I decided, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to figure out, when these words were written, these 4 marks of the church, what did the men who penned these words, what did they mean? So, one answer to the question of where have I been for a while, the year 325 AD at the Council of Nicaea, I decided to just, learn absolutely everything about it so I could figure out, what did the church look like right then when these men wrote this creed. So I had a lot of fun with that, obviously, because sometimes I'm not, a retriever. I can be a bloodhound and, put my head down and pick my head up, and all of a sudden I'm in California and I don't know what day it is or what happened. But I went all the way to Nicaea, learned that Santa Claus smacked somebody in the face. That was fun. All about Arius and Arius, that's his name, right? Okay. Oh, I'm losing track a little bit. Okay, let me reel this back in because I do want to keep this kind of short. Long story short, my dog is snoring in the background here. If you hear that, I apologize. Long story short, I got super stuck on days 114 through 120, and I kept listening to the podcast, but I just could not gather my thoughts well enough to do any reflecting. Just this past week, I finally decided, I need to talk to someone who's really just close to this situation. So I reached out to a guy who is super well known in the Catholic YouTube sphere who used to be a Protestant pastor, not Scott Hahn. I thought, if anyone can tell me about how Protestants view being apostolic and how it differs from the Catholic view, it's going to be a man who, could have been very successful, at least in the way that we would measure success in the Protestant world, but left his position of what truly is a position of authority, or at least it's a position that retains some autonomy that you don't get to keep when you become Catholic, but left his position of authority there to submit to the authority of the Catholic Church. That is just always so amazing and compelling to me. But he graciously spent some time helping me through the topic, and I didn't talk to him about sharing anything here, so I won't get too specific. But one big question I have is about apostolic succession as it relates to the sacraments. Like specifically, why baptism is valid in the Protestant world without apostolic succession, but the Eucharist can't be. And he had some really great answers and really helped me out. I haven't truly concluded all of this though. I feel like my thoughts are still scattered, and I really do mean it when I say, if I were to become convinced that apostolic succession is necessary, it's what do I do with the amazing experiences with Protestant leadership that I've had? Logically, I can hear your answers. Men can be spiritual leaders without having the ability to validly consecrate bread and wine. That's a complete oversimplification of it, but I can hear that, and I get that. I'm still studying this one. I want to try to start to wrap this up, but I really wanted to let you guys know I'm still here, I'm still at it, and I'm still loving it. I've got some time in the next week or so to really finish catching up. And although I know it may take me more than a year to finish my reflections, I do have the goal of making it through the Catechism in a year. So here's what I wanted to do. I'm going to spend some time catching up over the next few days, the next week, but instead of trying to do these deep dives into these really big topics, I hoped maybe you guys can help me out with the next one and maybe suggest certain days that you really loved, certain topics that maybe you're curious about. And I'll probably just cover them kind of quickly and lightly in the next one so that I can keep going. But too, if you have any questions for me regarding the Catechism or just in general, I'd love to interact with you guys in that way so we can kind of get reconnected while I'm moving forward. I am really looking forward to getting caught back up and to the idea that, I can save some of these deep dives for after the Catechism in a year is over. I didn't really have a plan for this channel, so that's helping me start to form one. Anyway, I hope you guys are doing great. I've missed y'all. Thank you for checking in on me. Leave me a question or suggestion in the comments, and I promise it will be weeks, not months, before we see each other again. I will see y'all next time.